Just telling my computer to quiet down. When I'm coming to I know, I like it. I am not abstract. I am not problems solved. But I was, like, when I looked through it, like, the only one I thought was standard 2. I think it's good. But I almost wondered if you could just incorporate those functions, like algebra, you know what I mean, into the other standards, like right here, calculating income, calculating all of those things, like, instead of having that be like an actual unit. What do you need, Maddie? Less than anyway, less than 5. There's 8, and then 1 optional standard. Oh, there's actually 2. Oh, is there? Oh, 10, yeah. In 5, 4, 3.
All right, so remember from last time that our global objective is our personal perspective and focus. That's going to drive all of our decision making as we craft units and lesson plans and all of those kinds of things, right? So who has a partner with a really intriguing and lovely global objective? So your partner's global objective, you really liked it. Oh, what? They all suck. Okay, Melanie. Okay, Emily, will you share it with us?
Okay. Students will develop critical thinking skills and cultivate their curiosity. As a result, students will become problem-solving citizens.
Nice. Say it again loudly.
Okay.
Teacher voice.
Students will develop critical thinking skills and cultivate their curiosity. As a result, students will become problem-solving citizens.
Outstanding. Can you tell me what an average day in her class is going to look like based on that global objective? Derek.
I lost it.
Okay, that's all right. Paul.
I would guess that the Socratic method is like she'd be asking her students and having them verbalize what they're learning.
Excellent.
To make sure they're understanding.
Okay. What else is she going to have them doing, Jeremy?
I was going to say she's going to be challenging them. She's not going to give them a free pass.
Good.
I would say the questions she would ask would be very open, like what ifs and how's, whys.
Good. So notice none of you said she is going to stand at the board with a PowerPoint to teach mathematics. It happens. Okay? A PowerPoint to teach mathematics, after which the students do a worksheet full of problems. Okay. So do you see how much that global objective should be impacting our decision making in our classrooms? Okay, another really great global objective. Ready?
Do I say my course too that I want to teach?
Yes.
So it's lifetime activities, and then my global objective is that students will broaden their knowledge and discover what physical activity and fitness will be.
Okay, good, because a lot of kids think that physical fitness has to come from an hour in the gym, or playing specific sports. Okay, what was that? For Jillian Michaels. Okay, good. So what's out there for the kids to explore? What will kids be doing in her class then?
Learning about how to apply the things that are learning into their lives.
Good. Okay, and to one specific thing?
Or throughout the whole life.
Good. So she's going to be focusing a lot on inquiry and transfer, right? What does this activity do to your body, and how can you sustain that over time, or can you? And maybe we switch it up by season. So there's lots of inquiry going on. One more to share. One more global objective. Great.
To help students understand how good nutrition and health choices are important to implement now and to build on for a better life in all aspects.
Nice. Okay. Again, we're seeing personal application kinds of things. Okay. Did anybody craft a global objective that was more helping students acquire the body of knowledge within my discipline oriented, so more essentialist or perennialist? Derek, you did?
Oh, Jessica did.
Jessica did. Okay, share.
I want my students to become sufficient writers and readers for the next year.
Nice. Okay, and I would argue that's not the acquisition of a body of knowledge, right? That is the development of a skill. Will they be writing in Jessica's class? All the time. Good. Okay. So now, what we're going to have to do is come together with your partner, okay? Decide if you're going to keep one of yours that you came up with over the last couple of days, or if you want to craft a new one together to start us on the journey of scoping and sequencing a course. Okay, and we're going to be working on this in earnest over the weekend and for the rest of next week. Okay? All right, so take a minute to discuss with your partner. Do you want to keep one or the other of your work, or do you want to kind of come together on something new? I've got a few extra forms up here if you want them, or we've got them digitally in the module.
I just wrote that. Yeah. I just like jotted down what I did. I think that is very good. Yeah. So we don't have that, right? No, I like that. Are there? Yeah, I like the reason why we chose that. Yeah.
I'm seeing some name tags out, but not all of them. Did you get your name tags out?
I like that. Thank you. I don't know how.
You may have 20.
Now I switch back.
Right?
I'm just trying Can I steal this?
That, yes.
This one? Okay.
Steal away.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like it. Maybe not like I don't know. Yeah. Or we provide, why do you care? Yeah. We wanted a little perspective.
So maybe just decide
one of them is like, now mine got out of order.
That's it.
It's about developing skill, right? The content
So we plan it. I like that. Yeah, I oh, right. So maybe be like, there we go. We can just like craft it up. Absolutely. I'm gonna type that. Yeah.
Do you feel like we should enjoy that?
Be as messy as you want on this blocking form. This is our preliminary form that we're going to mark up, okay? And then you're going to complete the scope and sequence.
Oh,
I don't think I have any more
okay.
physical ones, but there are some online.
We have
Nope. Don't move on yet. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, it may feel a little difficult to now compromise on your own personal global objective as you work with somebody else. And of course, you as an instructor, as a teacher, have the right and the privilege of maintaining your own personal global objective. So I was just talking with Derek and Jessica, and they were like, well, I was like telling him, you're never going to be allowed to plan alone again. Basically, right? English is really into the use of PLCs and group collaboration and things like that, which is awesome. But that doesn't mean that your classroom is a cookie cutter of your neighbor's classroom and those kinds of things, right? You may sequence things together and scope them out together, but your global objective can be different, right? And you will put twists and tweaks on the individual lessons so that they're yours and they fit for you. When I was first hired here, I had a really fascinating experience of collaborating with the faculty member that teaches the elementary educational psychology class. And she's a little bit more of a perennialist and essentialist. I'm much more of a progressivist. So as you might imagine, we had different perspectives on what the class should look like, right? And so hers was definitely more like lecture and test oriented, tests being weighted very heavily in her class, those kinds of things. I was very like, let's play with marshmallows, and I really don't care about tests. I know, elementary should be having more fun. So actually there was some contention there at the beginning because we were trying to make things match and do everything the same. And she's like, well, that lesson plan feels weird when I do it. And I was like, I feel terrible about having heavily weighted tests. So what we resulted in is having common assessments, though we weight them differently. We treat them very differently. And common course objectives. So we want the outcomes to be the same for our students, but the way we address that within our classes is very different. Okay, so it's worked really nicely. We even scope and sequence it together and do it in a similar sequence. But what it looks like on a daily basis is different. Okay, so it's an interesting balance to start to strike, and I'm glad you get the chance to do it here where it's completely safe. Right? And I know you're going to want to be like, everything I create in this class is something that I will definitely use when I go forward and teach in the classroom. But just like you're going to use your content as a vehicle for skill development, we're using now your core that you're playing with as a content for skill, or a vehicle for skill development. So we're developing the skill of sequencing instruction and creating lesson plans and things like that. I hope you get to use them. But really it's about, I want to get to the point where these skills are automatic for me and I'm not afraid of them in any way, shape, or form. So that our list from last time, where step 1 was to cry, we can scratch that off. Okay? You won't cry. You'll be like, I know what I'm doing. I'm good to go. All right. The other thing from your reading from last time, Dewey stated that we not only wish, oh wait, no, wrong one. Wrong one. Where did it go? I started and then I read the wrong one. There it is. It is important for curriculum specialists to regard their attitudes and beliefs as tentative, as subject to re-examination whenever facts or trends challenge them. Right? So our global objectives may shift and our perspectives on teaching should shift as we work with others. All right. How are you feeling about global objective? Feel good about this idea? Understand why you should take the time to figure out what yours is? Should it be communicated to your students? Oh, yeah, big time. Yeah, like make a poster that goes on your wall, right? Okay. Autumn will make you a poster. All right. So now we need to get into the next layer of objectives. So our global objectives are coming from society. They're coming from the school that we work at, as we have a mission statement that we need to help make sure we're supporting, and they come from our personal beliefs. Now let's get into educational objectives. So have this out. Okay, so if you notice that global objectives are really broad, and then we're narrowing the scope as we go, okay? Take a guess at what we're talking about with regard to educational objectives. There you go. Say it louder, Callie. Your standards. Okay? All right, so where do these come from? Where are they articulated? In your state and or national standards. Physical education. I had a discussion with Dr. McGee. She is perfectly happy and lovely with you using the national core. Okay? So you might want to take a gander at that if you haven't done so already. ASL also needs to use the national core, but I don't think any of you are ASL at the moment. Anybody dance in here? No, right? Okay. All right, everybody else should be on Utah core. Switching over to this old school tech. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, wrong direction because I don't have any spatial reasoning skills. Seriously, I played soccer, basketball, and dance, and I can't. I have no spatial reasoning skills. It's ridiculous. Okay. Get to project my disgusting burn for you. Wish I could write with my left hand and ignore that for you. All right. What kinds of knowledge from our readings do you think these standards are focused on? Do you remember the 4 types of knowledge?
I was just going to say they seem to focus on your math, your reading, your science.
Okay, good. So they're definitely subject-oriented, right? Which of the 4 knowledge types, though, within our readings?
Factual.
Yes. Okay, so factual knowledge and one other kind.
Concept.
Yeah. Conceptual and factual knowledge are the focus of these. Okay, so our global objective got us our transfer knowledge, skills, and knowledge and abilities that should kind of be above our course and really are about life. And then these standards are focused on the concepts and the facts that the students are supposed to get. What level of curriculum design should these guide?
Class.
Okay, so the course and unit. Good. Okay, so obviously they determine the scope of our course, right? And then specifically as we get down into unit design. How would we assess these objectives?
State test.
Okay, so we've got standardized or common assessments, right? Are tests the only way we do this? Good. So if I propose to you the 2 words formative assessment and summative assessment, which one would we use for unit level and course level? Summative assessment. Okay. I would be happy to, or you will learn about it over the weekend for Ed Psych. But formative forms your instruction. It informs it as you're going. Summative tells you the sum of their understanding when they're done. Okay? All right, so will you brainstorm with your partner examples of these assessments? Examples of summative assessments you may give. Don't write these on your paper. We're just coming up with examples of these for second event.
But yeah. Yeah. And like, you need a partner. And along with that, yeah. Jeremy's over there, but he's like one alone. Together with her, and Terrence. There's a section on like investments.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we had tests. We had performances. What else did you come up with?
We decided for an nutrition unit to actually go and do it for a week.
Yes. Good. So that would be considered a performance of the objectives, right? Good.
We talked about just having the students write papers to show that they understand the material they're being taught.
Good.
Portfolio.
Excellent.
I was gonna say same thing, portfolio and sketchbook.
Beautiful.
Talk about giving presentations.
Good. Okay, so you get the gist of how we would go about assessing these objectives. Now, look at your core for a minute. Pull out 1 or 2 examples of an educational objective. Now, this is where we start to have some fun. Because everybody's core looks different at this point. In the state of Utah, we used to have everybody on a standard format. Okay, so I'm explaining this to you because there's going to be some confusion going forward with regard to terminology. So we're going to stop right now and just take a minute to address it. Okay? So we used to have a standard format that we followed, and it was standards, objectives, indicators. Okay? That's how the core was crafted for everyone. I'm going to use Internet Explorer right now because it's right there. Don't judge me. It's not my preference. I know. It's awful. Okay. So if I go in, for example, I think Health, you're still that way, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. Come on, baby. You can do it. It's okay.
What happens when you use Internet Explorer?
Right? Oh my gosh, seriously. Seriously. Sorry, I have a 10th grader. I say things like Merca and seriously. And right? I say that all the time now. It's awful. But luckily I'm not teaching 7th grade anymore, so I don't go around saying, bro. Bro. The first time one of my kids said that to me, I was like, what is he saying? It was in the middle of a class, and I was teaching him something new, and he was like, bro. And I was like, what is my bra strap showing? What is going on? And they're like, no, that's just something he said. Okay. So if I look at the health core, you can see standard 1, objective 1, and then here are the indicators that we would use to actually measure student progress. Okay? Now, some of you have this, which is lovely. Math is sitting there smiling at me going, Y'all, it's a friggin' mess, right? World language. It's weird. Okay, so now we have things like strands. Okay. Yep. Some of you have strands. So the fine arts have moved to strands. Math has moved to strands. Language arts has moved to strands. Okay. So in most cases, the strands are the big idea topics. Okay. So let's see. We'll pull up math so you guys can see what they're having to deal with here. Strand, mathematical practices. And then underneath those are standards that relate to that strand. Okay? So the reason they've done that is to make the progress from grade to grade more apparent. What they're saying is, in math in first grade, we're addressing this strand of mathematical practices, but they look way different in first grade, they better, than they do in 10th grade, right? They look super different. So, they're showing us the cyclical nature of the curriculum across the grade levels. So that's what they're doing in language arts, that's what they're doing in math, that's what they're doing in fine arts, etc. Okay? So on your form, this is back on your curriculum blocking form. You're going to see a list of, it just says standard 1, standard 2, standard 3, etc. Okay? That is there because I don't want you to have to write out over and over and over again the strand or the big standard, whatever your curriculum is using, for every unit. Okay? I want you to just really easily be able to say, this is coming from the MP strand, and I know what that is because you told me at the top. And you know what that is because you wrote it at the top. So would you just jot down a note next to that section? You don't want to take the time to write every single one of them out. Next to that section, you're just going to copy and paste the major strands if you're using this form of the core. Or, let's see, I'll pull up the social studies for you. The major standard if you're using this form of the core. Okay, so the big idea topics you're going to put there so that you don't have to repeat them over and over again or forget what they refer to or whatever. So we're just going to list them out. And usually we only have somewhere between 5 and 8 of these big strands or standards. Okay?
So the standards list on schools.utah.gov the same as this?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah, in a slightly different format. I'll give you some more exposure to UEN later. I love the UEN. We're so lucky to have it. But it is a little, hey folks, by the way, Paul was just asking me about the site that I'm on. So these are the same standards except for fine arts. Okay, fine arts, you guys have to go to schools.utah.gov because they haven't moved them over yet. Okay, everybody else, you can use uen.org/core. It's easier to copy and paste because your core documents on schools.utah.gov are PDFs, so the formatting's a pain. This is just straight HTML, so it's easy to copy and paste. So if you want to use this link, you can. uen.org/core is what I'm on. All right. We feeling okay at the moment? You know what to put at the top there?
Quick question.
Sure.
So are we writing out loud? We've got reading standards for literature.
Yeah, so your strands that you're going to put up here are reading literature, reading informational texts, those big dealers. Yeah. Yes. I know.
Yeah. Okay. When you do it, yeah. You're fine. Yeah, that's one. We don't want.
Yes.
Are you, so is this just
No, because we are doing the whole course. All 10. So if it's a standard interval, okay, right here. Okay.
Yeah, well, we have 10, but we have not. We also have size.
Okay, just do
The neural pathway.
Oh, okay, yep.
So just do the standard.
Okay.
Yes.
Here, I'll just flip afterwards. So ours.
Yes.
I don't like these.
Yeah, so straight reading of the story. So yeah, the more the concept is the more the concept
I know.
repeated right? Then the stronger the I think that's how I would explain it. Yeah.
You guys good? Which course are you taking?
Mathematics for first time.
Oh, lovely. Okay. I like it. Brave women. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm excited for it. I know. Interesting good stuff.
Yeah. All right. Then on your note-taking form, now you have some examples of educational objectives, right? So they can be anything that comes out of that core document, right? Because we're going to make a distinction for one more layer of curriculum, and that is a learning objective. So don't worry, we're going to come back to the educational objectives because that's where we're spending the rest of our time on this unit and the next one, okay? But let's jump ahead to learning objectives for a moment. This one. Stop it, you. There it goes. Okay, learning objectives down at the bottom. If they're the narrowest piece, what do you think we're talking about here? So we had our global objective that drives everything you do in your course. We have the educational objectives, which are the core curriculum standards and objectives from your document to which you are held accountable and which you're going to have to use to design your units of instruction. What would be then our learning objectives?
Daily lessons.
Yeah. What are we trying to accomplish with each and every lesson? Okay, so let's get into this one. All right, I wander around and then I put my pen places and I'm like, what do I do? Okay, where are these articulated? Where do you find them?
Like the core indicators.
Okay.
Right in here.
Some of you have core indicators. Will you read one of them for me?
Cite strong and thorough textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly as well as inferences drawn from the text.
Okay. Whoa. So here's the struggle, right? I want you to focus on this level being today. By the end of today, what will my kids be able to do? Sometimes the indicator within your core is specific enough that you actually will accomplish that today. But sometimes it's not, okay? So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. I'm going to propose to you that for the most part, those indicators are going to come from your brain. Okay? You write them. But what are we going to have to be very careful about?
Making sure they're aligned.
Yes, we've got to make sure they're aligned to the standards and objectives that are in the core document. So you have to be able to justify to your principal or to your colleagues that this indicator or learning objective, or learning target, or I can statement, or DOKs, every single district calls them something different. Yay. Okay. But we don't care what they call them. We're saying, I am going to craft an objective every day that will tell me exactly what my kids should be able to do by the end of that day that will lead them toward accomplishment of the standards and objectives in the core. That's what we're saying, okay? Whether I get to steal that directly from the core because they actually did a decent job, Spanish actually has a bunch of potential indicators that we can steal, which is great. Some of them suck, but it's all right. I am so negative about the new Spanish form. I'm so sorry. Okay, but whether that means we get to copy and paste it or we're writing our own, it's really about what will they do today that will lead them toward the core objectives, okay? So, maybe core, or we write our own. And that is the more likely of the scenarios. Once you get into your district that hires you, they will train you in the particular format they like. Okay, so when I was teaching for Lake Ridge, we used I can statements. And I would put those I can statements in my PowerPoints or on the board every day, right? I can use active listening skills when speaking with others. And then we'd have a lesson on active listening skills. Okay, so you state it that way so the kids are saying, hey, I can use active listening skills when speaking with others. Did you know? Okay, because they do that. All right. Right? Okay, what kinds of knowledge do these get at from our reading? Come on, P, you're all over this. What kinds of knowledge are we building on a daily basis? Metacognitive knowledge, right? Because we want them reflecting on, do I know this? Can I do this? So metacognitive, look at the overlap between psych and this class right now. And factual. And one more. Yeah, procedural. Because a lot of them are going to be, I can do this, right? I can cite textual evidence. That's a procedure. Knowing how to cite properly in whatever format we've chosen for the kids to use, that's a procedure. I can perform a dig in volleyball, right? I can. These are all procedures, okay? So that's something we're going to target as well. I can factor polynomials. Yay! No, I can't. Not anymore. Okay. I don't remember how, and I need to watch the Khan Academy videos because that's what my daughter's doing right now in math and physics. Okay. So these are know and do. All right. Which level of curriculum design are these for?
Everyday.
Lesson. Everyday lessons. And how do you think these ones are assessed? Formative assessments. So our little assessments that we do on a daily basis to give us insight or to inform us about how well our students are mastering the concepts. We are going to spend a lot of time in this class and in your Ed Psych class on formative assessment, okay? So we're not going to worry about that right now. Could you turn to your partner and give an example of a learning objective, indicator, learning target, ICANN statement, etc., that you would want your kids to be able to perform at the end of a lesson? Any example? It needs to be narrow and specific. Yeah, and I'm sure.
I can use evidence from your document. Yeah. 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 So it looks like I right. And then another one. I think and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so here's my example that I am working on with my 6th grade soccer team right now. I can perform a push pass while under pressure from a defender. They did not demonstrate this ability in our game on Tuesday. We will be working on it. Okay. Will you now compare, contrast these statements that you're coming up with the stuff that's in your core document? Make sure that it's narrower and more specific, that it's really doable in one day. Okay, so just take a minute to think about and discuss and compare these narrow statements with your core. I can walk in shoes. I always love this one. So it's always a work workshop. And so after he like showed up on the board, like, this is how you do it.
So-
Then they all like practiced together. Such a
Yes, we did.
I love it when I get unit plans and it's like World War II. And I'm like, really? You're gonna do that in 5 days? Good luck with that.
I'm gonna break it down. To talk about
My favorite.
I know. We still do it.
And then we got
There's like American like just thinking like going to the stores when I write on something.
I like heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you have the
Go buy that, but you know, there's $10,000 actually cost
Okay, we don't care about terminology right now, right? We're not going to worry about whether our stuff says standards or strands or whatever. Do you? I want to see a thumbs up, a middle, or a thumbs down with perfect honesty. Do you understand what a global objective is, its purpose, and why we would take the time to do it? Show me. Okay. What am I doing right now? What form of assessment? Formative. Okay. Do you know where to find the educational objectives that will direct your course and unit planning? Where to find them? Okay. And do you understand how a learning objective is distinct from but supportive of those educational objectives? Good. Okay. Hopefully, for those of you who were middle thumbs, we'll get a little clarity as you actually start playing with them. Okay. We are going to leave learning objectives to the side for a while. Okay, we're not ready to go to that level yet. So we're going to back up, and we're going to stay here for the next couple of weeks. Okay? Switching over. So our task now is to say, we have this global objective that we want our students to reach. And then we have a whole stinking load of core that we're supposed to cover. How do we then go about choosing where to spend our time? Okay. So we could easily say, well, find out what's on the standardized test and make sure that stuff's covered. We could say things like that, and that is one filter that we could use to look at our core. There are some other filters that you might use as you start to analyze this core and really start to think about, what do I address? Okay. So one of those filters might be the endurance of that concept, principle, or skill. What do I mean by that, do you think? The endurance of the concept, principle, or skill?
Lasting value.
Yeah. Lasting value beyond the 18 weeks or 36 weeks that they're in your class. Will they need or use or benefit from this information going forward in their lives? So you might take that filter as you look through your core curriculum this weekend and start to select the major topics that you're going to cover in your course. Another one might be those concepts, skills, etc., that represent the heart of the discipline. Okay? If you are going to be a physicist, here are the skills and concepts that you must master. These are the heart of our discipline. Maybe we use the filter of uncoverage. So within math, there are a lot of misconceptions and things that kids struggle with. How could we identify those and make those the focus of our course so that we spend our time uncovering those mysteries, those difficulties, and those misconceptions? Okay? So for example, you have to be born good at math. Oh yeah? Let me show you, right? And we go through the course. And then, of course, we can't discount that some stuff's just cooler than other stuff. It is. Some stuff's friggin' boring. Okay? Not to say we should neglect that, because sometimes the boring things are the fundamental things that they've got to get. But we want to make sure as we're designing our courses that we don't leave the stuff that would be especially engaging for the kids off to the side, right? Okay, so these are 4 potential lenses or filters through which you might start looking at your core this weekend and saying, okay, are there these enduring things that I want to build my course around? Or are there these concepts that are the heart of my discipline and I'm going to build my course around those? Or are there these misconceptions that I'm going to help my kids uncover? Or am I going to build my course around just having a really engaging experience with my content so that going forward they love it and they want to learn more about it? Okay? Or you might have your own particular filter. That's fine. Now, our next step is to take that core and sequence it. Okay? So the form that you have, this blocking form, and it looks very, very similar to what you're actually going to end up doing for the scope and sequence assignment. So this is just I labeled it differently so that you could mark it up and be crazy with it and not be afraid. Okay? We're going to have to figure out if this is the scope of my course. Here's my global objective up at the top. And then my filter that I'm using to choose what to address. How am I going to sequence it? What order am I going to teach this in? And there are a lot of different ways you could do that, okay? This is why being in the education program is so difficult. There's no right way to do this. Everybody right now go like this. Why? Because there's no right way to do this. Okay? So if you turn in a scope and sequence that isn't perfect, what will I do?
Tear it apart.
Yes, I will. This is terrible. No. Right? I'm going to say, awesome. That's what I will say. This is a no-stress activity. Okay? This is simply a chance for you to start working with your core, working with your filters and your global objective to try and sequence a course. That's it. Okay? This is no pressure. So here are some ways that you might do it. For example, in dance, I have to sequence my course to some extent by skill development, right? Because if they don't have the basic locomotor skills that I need them to have, like they don't know how to skip, then I cannot choreograph a piece that involves skipping. Okay? Like there are some basic things there that have to happen in order. Okay? I can't write a full thesis paper if I don't know how to write a thesis first, right? So there's like that potential. We could organize it around a common theme. And this can be a really beautiful way to do it. So I don't know how many of you know Dr. Cook, who's our department chair. She's really fantastic. She was an English teacher at American Fork High School. And she took the theme of geography. So her literature courses were a tour of the world. And she would visit different areas of the world. And her kids have ended up being world travelers. They send her postcards from all over the world because it's impacted them so much that she took this perspective of let's learn about the world through literature. Okay? We can do chronology, right? Now, why do I have not so bueno?
It can be bueno.
It's rarely bueno. So when we look at the research, the literature that has actually been written about sequencing courses, that is typically the least effective method. Okay? It's not particularly engaging for kids. It can be decontextualized because it's like, okay, 1563, that happened, right? So it can be really challenging because it's like, I don't know what else was going on in the world. I don't know why this is relevant to me. It's just basically that march through history can be challenging for kids, okay? So if you look at the literature, it's typically better if we use a skills focus, a thematic focus, or a geographical focus.
But you can still teach it in chronological order.
You can. You just need to
not have
find.
that be your-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can say, let's look at freedom or revolution, and we're going to do that in a chronological way. But we're leading up to modern freedom or modern revolution and what those mean. And we're going to get there by exploring what it's meant historically. Yeah, so you can combine them. But the theme engages the kids. The chronology doesn't so much. Okay? I've put a link in Canvas to some other sequencing rationale, some other ways that we might sequence our curriculum. But these are some that could get you started. Okay? English majors, do we sequence our course based on the book we want them to read? No way. Okay? The book is not the objective, right? The skills that are developed through their interaction with the book, that's what we care about. Okay? So I'm actually not even going to permit you to put a book on your scope and sequence. Okay? You don't know what you'll have access to anyway. Okay, so I want you focusing on either skill development or thematic orientation. Okay? All right. Now, but giving you enough, global objective, filter to kind of see what can I really get to and what's the most meaningful here. A rationale for how you might go about actually sequencing the units that you have. And then a reminder. If you teach on an A-B schedule, you have 80 minutes a day, every other day, to teach your kids. Okay? That results in 22 of those days per term, 45 days per semester, 90 days per year. That's it. That's all you get. Okay? So we really have to start being realistic about what we can actually cover in that amount of time. What we've done for you on this form, may I steal yours, Melly, for just a minute? If you'll notice, it says quarter one or term one, however you want to interpret that, okay? We've kind of blocked for you 2 units there. If you want to put 3 in there, that's fine. If you are looking at your core and you're like, well, there's kind of this like mini unit in there that'll probably only take a few days, but it's not directly connected to these other big ideas. That's fine. Okay, so there's an online version of the scope and sequence document that you're going to be able to add columns to and stuff, and that'll be just fine. For now, we just gave you 2 to kind of show you 11 days. Okay, most units, we usually target about 5 to 7 days in a unit. But then there are assemblies. And there are early outs and late ins. And there are stupid calls from the office that interrupt you every 3 minutes. Okay. I love teaching college. I don't have any of that. Okay. There are holidays. There's all kinds of stuff, right? So they get interrupted. So really look at about 2 to 3 units per term. And that's all you get. Okay? And as I was talking with the history department over here, World War II is not a unit, right? You cannot thoroughly address World War II in 5 days. So we've got to think about chunking that instruction. I know this seems overwhelming right now, but again, this is just our first ever attempt at doing this. We're going to try it out. We're going to think pie in the sky, which is awesome, right? And we're going to use this really cool tool I just found out about. You ready? It's called Google. Right? Have you seen this? Because you can Google scope and sequence secondary math 1. Oh my goodness, look at that. There are scope and sequences online that we can get ideas from. Okay? Don't plagiarize them, but you can get ideas from them. Okay? And if you do end up saying, wow, this is really spectacular, great rule of teaching number 2. Beg, borrow, steal, and cite. Okay? Great rule of teaching number 1, talk to your students. Great rule of teaching number 2, beg, borrow, steal, and cite. Okay? What's another really great resource for scope and sequence? Ideas.
Other teachers.
Whoa, other teachers that, have done this before. Yes. Okay, so if you've got your field placement, an outstanding first question to ask your field or your cooperating teacher would be, would you be willing to share your course scope and sequence with me? Good. Okay. All right. We're not going to use a textbook as a scope and sequence, right? The best teachers get their textbook if they have one, and they say, that's nice. Where are the skills in this textbook that I'm wanting my kids to build? And the best teachers will do things like, today we're working on chapter 8. Tomorrow we're going to be working in chapter 2. Because the textbook is not necessarily sequenced in the order you judge best for the development of the skills and knowledge of your kids. Okay, so you're not taking a textbook. That's why I'm not concerned whether we have textbooks or anything for this class. Okay. If you English majors have done Dr. Wallace's scope and sequence, this is much more laid back than that. Okay, just to let you know. All right, so what we're doing, let me make sure I don't have anything else on here. Yes. Okay. You've got your partner, your course, and your grade level that you want to try and work on. Yeah? You've got a global objective that's going to be driving your decision making. Okay. You're going to choose a sequencing rationale. So are you going to go by skill development? Are you going to go chronology? Are you going to go theme? What are you doing? Okay. And you're going to kind of explain to me why you want to do it that way. So there's a spot for that. Sequencing rationale, just a sentence or two saying I chose a thematic sequencing because. Okay. And then you're going to try it out. So you're going to dive into your core curriculum and you're going to figure out, okay, my theme for Unit 1 is going to be developing a voice. Which standards and objectives relate to this theme of developing a voice? And I'm going to start pulling those in. My theme for Unit 2, right? So you're going to do that and just start finding the core that goes along with these themes or whatever you're developing. This will make more sense as you start doing it, I promise. When we come back on Tuesday, we're going to be talking about essential questions and their role in unit planning and things like that. And then next Thursday, you're going to share the drafts of your scope and sequence documents with your peers to get some feedback before you turn them in. Okay, so we've got time on this. We've got a full week from right now to get these, what are going to be rough drafts and imperfect anyway, as close to perfect as we can. Okay? So just making sure you know what you have on Canvas at your disposal. And then I'm going to give you 15 minutes to work. It's like a big one list of them. Okay, if you go into the assignments, or you can find it in the modules area, wherever you need to, there's this scope and sequence assignment right there. That's what we're starting right now. Okay? Again, the one that I gave you is your scratch one. Okay, this will be the official one that you need to go in and use. There's the template. You can choose either of the templates that you want. There are examples in a bunch of different content areas that you can go and kind of see how some of your peers have done this in the past, all that kind of stuff, okay? All right, so to end my section, would you please stand up? You are going to walk around musical chairs for a minute. One more time. Skip. Yes. Stop. Find the closest person to you that is not your friend that you've been working with all day. There you go. Your prompt is on the board.
Check your shots.
I'll make it bigger. There you go.
I know. Stand.
Right? So how that relates to
What you want to do.
I'm teaching